On this upcoming attractions, we got trailers for Project Power and Halloween Kills, plus reviews for The Old Guard, Dr. Sleep Director's Cut, and King of Staten Island, plus the NDF game. All this and more on Midnight Double Feature. And we're back. That kind of sounds like we came out of a commercial, but whatever. How you doing, man?
I'm good, dude. How you doing? What's happening? It's been a long couple of weeks.
Yeah. I'm excited. For those listening, I'm experimenting with a new setup with the Rode Podcaster Pro. So if I sound better, that's why. What did I call it?
I think it's called a Procaster, right?
Rode Podcaster Pro.
No.
Whatever.
No.
It's the new one and it's good. It's a portable, like, fucking recording setup, and it's pretty sweet. And I'm using a new mic to go with it. And if I sound terrible, it's because as a backup, I've got a smart lav microphone attached to me. So we'll see what the fuck happens. And you, Zoe, you did a pretty cool interview recently.
Oh, yeah. I did an interview with Sean O'Connell, which was actually kind of surreal, man. He's the host of Real Blend, which is a podcast that I've dropped a few times on this episode, on this particular podcast. And, I listen to these guys every week. It's, these three guys. They're actual film critics, so like they actually get called out to interviews and things like that. They go on press junkets, they go on like set visits and stuff like that. And they go to premieres, like whatever. Like they're in the industry, right? Like,
they're the real deal. Yeah,
they're the real deal. So I follow Sean on Twitter, and I never do this. Like I never cold tweet someone. Like I never, like I just don't. Like I just, I'm just like, I don't know. It's kind of annoying. And like it never works. So Sean has been writing this book. If you haven't listened to the episode that we dropped the last episode before this, Sean's been writing this book about the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. Again, he uses his insider knowledge to set up interviews with people like Zack Snyder to kind of get credibility for this book and stuff like that. So he posted that he just recently completed his book. So I was like, hey, Sean, congratulations. Would you be interested on, joining us for an interview for Midnight Double Feature? And he just inboxed me and he's just like, let's do it. And I was like, oh, dude, like, that's so good, man. Like, so good. So honestly, it was just so like absolutely surreal to be interviewing someone like that, man, to be interviewing someone who has shaken the hands of some of your favorite filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino and Sam Mendes. And John Krasinski and stuff like that. Like, it's insane. So that was really fun, man. Like, and thank you so much to Sean for joining us again on the podcast. That was really, really, like, we were honored to host you.
That was a big get for us, and shout outs to you for taking the initiative and grabbing that, man. It's a great interview. I really enjoyed listening to it. So if you haven't, definitely check it out to talk all things like Justice League and Snyder Cut. And speaking of going to the movies, which is basically the only thing we talk about in this podcast, I was just looking for a segue. The movies have been sort of opened here in Australia, and Zoe and I, we've gone a few times. We recently went to a double feature and saw Jurassic Park and Jaws. We've been talking about it for a while. And
did you just quickly? Did you happen to hear the final minutes of that interview with Sean O'Connell?
I haven't finished it.
Okay, because I specifically asked him to weigh in on Jaws v Jurassic Park.
Where did he land? He's on your side, isn't he?
I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to ruin it for anyone who hasn't listened to it. I don't want to ruin it for you, but it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm still in the Jurassic Park camp personally, but I still love Jaws. We recently saw King of Staten Island together in the movies. That was pretty cool to see a new film in a cinema. I don't know if we're going to get more of that. More on that later.
I don't think we're going to get more of that. Like, given how things are happening here in Australia,
actually, let's get into it now.
It seems to be bouncing back. Like, we're already here. Why not?
Yeah, so
again, and we don't like talking about the virus and stuff like that on the podcast. It's just something we don't get into. But considering the fact that it is affecting our movie going sort of thing, and then which in turn affects the podcast, it's kind of unavoidable.
Yeah. So what I find interesting is we just got news. I think it was yesterday from the time of this recording, that Tenet has been delayed, and as well as King Kong vs Godzilla, which came with a beautiful image, by the way. I just think it's really interesting because we've sort of seen Tenet as like this tentpole film, which will sort of like sort of tell everybody how the movies will go, and the fact that that's got delayed, I think, is pretty concerning for a lot of studios. And I'm really worried because like we saw King of Staten Island in a relatively empty cinema, and it's a Judd Apatow film. That's kind of a big deal, I think.
Got no names though. Like I don't think that movie was going to make money, to be honest.
Yeah, like you know what, like
we can get into this on the review, but
yeah, well, I think it's still worth mentioning here though. But like, yeah, they aren't like really. There's no Chris Hemsworth, you know. There's no huge. There's no
Seth Rogen. There's no Steve Carell. Like you know.
Yeah, and to have someone
even
like
Amy Schumer, like for Trainwreck, right? Apatow's other film.
Yeah, like I imagine, like even Bill Burr, one of the biggest comedians in the world, but this isn't exactly a type of film speaking to his fan base. And he's a really interesting actor because he always does a lot of dramatic stuff rather than comedic. With the exception of like F is for Family, I can't think of a straight comedy role I've ever seen him play outside of stand up. And then you got Pete Davidson, who's just Saturday Night Live, not even a huge part of Saturday Night Live. And, you know, outside of America, who watches that show? So yeah, I have a feeling it's going to flop. Box office wise, although I like the film, spoilers. And I think we're not going to see many new films for a while on screen. And that's pretty disheartening, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I said on the last episode of the podcast, I don't think we're going to see American cinemas open back up this year. Like, you know, I think we're definitely headed in that direction.
It's funny, 2 weeks ago on the podcast, I disagreed with you, and my opinion's done a complete 180 now. Like, over the last few days, we've had a lot of outbreaks in Australia, and you know, I can see this shutting down for at least 3 months, which is sad, but that's the way it goes, and it's all about safety. So let's continue on with our downer of a streak and keep this episode nice and depressing.
Please don't ruin his name.
Do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, look, so Grant Imahara was a former Mythbuster, and, you know, I kind of wanted to shout him out on the podcast because, look, I used to watch Mythbusters back in the day. And, you know, actually, I used to watch it with my dad a lot back in the day, and it was a staple for us. You know, like it was an actual thing. Like we actually sat down and watched pretty much every episode on SBS or wherever the fuck it aired. And we loved it, man. And I remember Grant Imahara on that show popping up from time to time. And, you know, just kind of like looking into what this guy was all about, dude. Like, this is someone who ended up working for ILM, you know, Industrial Light and Magic, which is like the big, you know, effects company owned by Lucasfilm. He ended up, you know, working on movies like Jurassic Park, The Lost World, Jurassic Park 3, like, Indiana Jones, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Like he was kind of like doing Stan Winston-y stuff. Like, you know, he was creating practical effects and things like that. Like he would actually like he built a life-size baby Yoda and took it into like children's hospitals, you know, just to kind of like cheer him up and stuff like that. So like, you know, and like by all accounts, he was like the nicest person on the planet. Like, you know, so it's always just kind of a little sad when you see like someone like this pass away who, you know, nobody has like a bad word to say about him. Like, you know, even if you get like the most controversial like figures or like the biggest actors who pass away, there's still people who are like, yeah, I don't know about that guy. I have not heard like a single negative thing about this guy. Like this guy, you know, in 2008, he said, I like the challenge of designing and building things, figuring out how something works and how to make it better or apply it in a different way. When I was a kid, I never wanted to be James Bond. I wanted to be Q because he was the guy who made all the gadgets. I guess you could say that engineering came naturally. And like he just kind of like came off as like one of those very like, you know, really curious souls. Like, you know, like he was just someone who really wanted to who wanted to know how things ticked. You know, as he was a part of the Star Wars prequels, the Matrix Reloaded, Revolutions, Galaxy Quest. I love Galaxy Quest. Van Helsing, AI, T3. Like he's done some shit, man. And like, you know, it's a bit of a bummer. Like it's just like, you know, when this hit, I was just like, that sucks. And the way he went, dude. Like he was 49 years old, completely healthy, completely fine, and then just one day he had a brain aneurysm, and
Wow.
there he goes. Like, you know, he didn't have cancer, he didn't get shot, he didn't get robbed, stabbed, whatever. He just didn't wake up one day, and man, like someone as young as him is 49 years of age. It just made me think this morning, you know, like I was like really thinking about it. I was like, God damn, like this is someone who really looked after themselves, and you know, even then, just didn't wake up. So there you have it.
That's scary, man. That's life. You never know what's going to happen. Cherish every moment like it's your last.
Yeah. So rest in peace, Grant Imahara.
Yeah. And if you enjoy depressing conversations like this, you can follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram. I'm sorry.
Oh boy.
Oh man. Yeah, this is heavy stuff. Let's move on to something positive, like our Facebook. No, I'm kidding. Let's move on to, I want to talk about how apparently they just started filming for the Uncharted film starring Tom Holland. And what leaps out to me personally is when they announced all this stuff, I hadn't played any Uncharted games. And as of recently, I've played 4. So I'm a lot more familiar. And I remember thinking when I first heard it, Nathan Drake is like an Indiana Jones, Rick O'Connell type character. What are they going to do with a younger guy? And as from playing 3 and 4, I have seen how there's a younger version of Nate and how he does kind of resemble Tom Holland a bit. So I'm like, okay, I get it. And I remember reading an interview where he said something like, oh, the way we're tackling the video game curse or whatever is by we're telling a part of the story you haven't seen, which is his younger years. But I kind of disagree. In 3 and 4, we play as him as a younger kid quite a bit. I do hope this means we're getting like that classic energy back and stuff. And I think by basing it not on a game that does give you some creative freedom. But yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic for it. How do you feel about Uncharted in general? Have you played much of those games?
Yeah, I love Uncharted. Those games by Naughty Dog are just absolutely fantastic. And we were talking about The Last of Us off air, and just, you know, we don't have to talk about how good Naughty Dog is. Like, you know, that's just it's known. But yeah, I've played through all 4 of those games, man. I haven't played the spin-off, but I absolutely love that series. I love how cinematic it is. I love how, you know, very much it feels like you're being put in the shoes of a character who is very much in a movie. You know, like with a mix of 007 and Indiana Jones. It's all kind of like spread in throughout there. So I'm keen for this movie, but I'm very I'm approaching it with some trepidation. Like, you know, like it's gone through 6 different directors, which is never a good sign. So Seth Gordon, Neil Berger, David O. Russell, Sean Levy, Dan Trachtenberg, and Travis Knight. And the guy who is actually rolling the cameras on this is Ruben Fleischer, who did Zombieland and Venom. 2 movies which are not amazing, in my opinion. I mean, like, you know, if you consider the directors that came before, like David O. Russell and Dan Trachtenberg, David O. Russell did, you know, The Fighter and goddamn, like American Hustle, and Dan Trachtenberg did 10 Cloverfield Lane. Yeah, so like when you compare those 2 directors specifically to Ruben Fleischer, it kind of feels like a little bit of a I don't know about this kind of thing.
Yeah, like I think that could have gone worse. But yeah, like I do think Zombieland, in my opinion, personal opinion, Venom and Zombieland are very like in the middle average films. I don't think they're terrible. I don't think they're great. I do think maybe having him work on a film like Venom is a bit of an advantage because he's worked with the studio format. He's done all the CGI stuff and the stylized forms for that. And I think a movie like, I'm judging by how things are going, I think it's going to be one of those films where they kind of just roll and get whatever the fuck they can and can. And then most of this film is made in post-production. I really think that's what it's going to be.
And that sounds like fucking garbage. Like,
it does, but I think it's going to be like that.
I know that it's going to happen because it's fucking Sony. Like, you know, I know it's going to happen. And like, look, Sony, and although, look, it's not a video game adaptation, but Sony has had some success with Jumanji, right?
Yes.
Like that, like it's a video game-esque movie. But you know, like I'm approaching it with some caution. You know,
look, I think that's a great comparison. Jumanji has some similar their take on the modern Jumanji films. They've got a lot of similarities to Uncharted, and they probably are just wanting another Uncharted. Sorry, another Jumanji, sorry.
Just quickly, do you know who's playing Sully? I'm wondering if you know, because I feel like you don't.
I remember hearing a while ago,
I feel like you'd
I
have a harsher approach if you knew.
here's the thing. Without looking it up, I remember it's a name, and I wasn't
Okay.
familiar with Sully as a character when I heard it. But I'm gonna take a limb. Is it Mark Wahlberg?
It is Mark Wahlberg.
Oh yeah. So hard to imagine Mark Wahlberg as Sully.
It's weird, like, because I'm just like, I don't know.
Like I know it's a younger version, but even like the voice.
And I think the Mark Wahlberg of it all is like a holdover from the David O. Russell days of directing, because David O. Russell works with Mark Wahlberg quite a bit.
Right.
Well, he did on The Fighter. But, this is also starring Antonio Banderas, who is 100% going to be the bad guy. Like 100%.
Oh, for sure.
He's foreign.
Just look at Uncharted and listen to his last name. Foreign bad guy. There you go. Hollywood racism and stereotypes. Where would we be without you?
Yeah, but I mean, look, it's not my most anticipated Naughty Dog adaptation. I mean, like, HBO have The Last of Us that's getting turned into a TV show with the help of Chernobyl creator Craig Mazin.
Let's talk about that actually.
Awesome.
So I've been thinking about it. So what we do know about
Have not finished the end. Finished the end.
No spoilers. But what we do know about the TV show is that'll be mostly based off the first game, and they may or may not take inspiration from the sequel. I think they said this before the second one came out. And maybe that happens later. We'll see. But I really hope they don't just tell the first game bit by bit, because we already got that show. It's called The Walking Dead seasons 1 to 3, or whatever the good ones are. Like, it's already been done. Like, sure, it'd be more of a focused with 2 characters, but with TV shows, you need more than 2 characters.
That's the part that separates it. The Walking Dead has no compelling characters, in my opinion. Like, Walking Dead has zombies, and that is it. Whereas, I don't know. I feel like you could do The Last of Us as a 10-episode miniseries with just 2 characters, and them coming into contact with like maybe 1 or 2 characters that you meet in 1 or 2 episodes, but nothing frequent. Like, no kind of like frequent characters that, like, in supporting roles and things like that. I think honestly, just keep the focus on Joel and Ellie. Build, obviously, probably in that first episode, show us the Joel's background, like including the death of his daughter, and then build the relationship over the next 9 episodes between Joel and Ellie.
Look, I hope you're right, but I feel very confident you're wrong. And this is why a lot of shows, in order to stretch out their time, they need a B story, and they can't have Joel and Ellie separate every single episode. That'll get so repetitive and it'll be so formulaic. So what I think could happen, and I hope I'm wrong, I really want to be wrong, but I think they're going to introduce a whole bunch of new characters where a lot of them are going to have their own in-depth storylines, and we're not just going to follow 2 characters, I don't think. I think they're going to cut away to some B plots every now and then. They're going to have all these new characters, and they're going to have their own stories and their own arcs, and then it's going to stop feeling like Last of Us, and then it'll start feeling like Walking Dead. I want to be wrong, but just thinking with the way a lot of these franchises, or a lot of these shows are made, like, they need that, because they don't want to pay the actors for a full episode. They want to spread across, like, for being the more time they're on camera. Yeah, well, even look, some like Game of Thrones, they had literally 3 different teams filming at the same time in 3 different countries.
I mean, it's based on a book. It's like a sprawling Lord of the Rings like size, like thing. It's the scope of the scope of Game of Thrones is so much bigger than The Last of Us, right?
Sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was just gonna say they kind of had their hands tied. I'm betting all of my chips on Craig Mazin. Like, I have 100% confidence that he's gonna knock this out of the park. Probably.
Let's be real. But I'm also thinking, based on my experience at Last of Us 2, one of the things I did like, especially when you get into the second half of the game, is they really... Yeah, it's good. They really flesh out the world. Well, they don't flesh it out. They kind of give you what you already know, but they show you other perspectives. And I can really see some good world building there. And I remember thinking, I wouldn't mind seeing more of this. And it actually got me thinking the show could be more than just like the typical 2 people on an adventure thing. And I can see how that could be explored in a TV show. And I have a feeling writers would be very tempted to go into that. I don't think that's a bad thing. But yeah, my biggest, I think, worry is, like with all video game adaptations, that first game was so great and with the storytelling. But if we just get shot for shot recreations of what we've already seen, no one's gonna like love that. Like, you know, there'll be some hardcore fans who like the source material stuff, but it's not gonna be an incredibly engaging show. So they have to flesh it out, and that's when you walk the tightrope of pissing off fans and getting new ones and all that crap.
I agree. It's funny that you talk about that because I was just talking about this with another friend of mine. The first season of Game of Thrones is actually pretty much like beat for beat the book. Like it doesn't vary at all. It doesn't like stray away from it at all. Like it's pretty much like word for word the book. And I read the book after I'd seen this first season of the TV show. And then, like, you know, I'm halfway through the book and I'm like, why am I reading this? Like, you know, like I've seen it. I've seen it. Like, so, you know, like that's why I love adaptations. Like, you know, like that's why, you know, whenever like directors and writers of comic book shows or comic book movies stray away from the actual source material, I applaud it. Like, I'm just like, dude, I love that. Like, I love your take on it. Like, you know, I love that Todd Phillips did a take on the Joker. Like, you know, like I like that it's his own Joker. He made it his own, and not, you know, it's not goddamn Bob Kane or whoever created Joker.
Yeah, I think when you try and recreate something and try and capture that same energy that was before, it's very hard to do that, and no one's ever going to be fully happy. So I think you need to like, I think it's kind of what Uncharted's doing is like they're taking the world, they're taking like the foundation blocks of what people like, and then they're just got a whole new playground. Or at least that's my impression of what they're trying to do with Uncharted. I don't know if Uncharted will be good, especially with those problems, but I imagine that's what they might do here. Unless I can also see this happening. They go the Dexter route. So Dexter, that show.
Kill me.
Hear me out. Season 1 and half of season 2, apparently, I haven't actually read the books, but they're actually pretty much like what you said with Game of Thrones, beat by beat, exactly what the books were, with just some little bits added here to stretch it out. But then apparently what happened, the writers got halfway through season 2 and they were just like, we don't like what happens in the book anymore. And then the book's apparently got in this really weird situation, like he gets possessed by some mythical demon and he becomes a cannibal and stuff. And so the writers apparently like, fuck this, our show's better than the books anyways. And then they started writing their own stuff. So about halfway through season 2. Yeah.
Sometimes that's the wise move.
In that case, by sounds of things, it was, although they should have ended that show a couple seasons earlier and
should have season 4, should have finished season 4, dude, with the Trinity Killer.
Oh man, I think one of the most uncomfortable moments I've ever had watching television is, slight spoilers for anyone who cares about this show from a million years ago, but like his sister his adopted stepsister Deborah is like, oh, I think I'm in love with you, and like there's a whole episode and then there's like a season arc where she's fighting her feelings for her adopted brother. I'm like, this is some weird Pornhub shit that I'm not interested in, man. Yuck. I was so uncomfortable.
So far from what Dexter was. Like, I love the whole idea of him having like a dark passenger, like someone kind of like whispering in his ear, and it's like his own soul like telling like, hey, look, you need to do this. Like, you know, like it's kind of like this is a part of you, this is your instinct. And then it's just like, man, like the show just devolves into just absolute soap opera bullshit, like, you know.
And that final season, I remember thinking, oh, it's gonna be a return to form because they bring in like this woman who apparently created the code, and I'm like, okay, they're going somewhere with this, and then like halfway through, they just shit the bed again. I'm like, no, you almost bounce back.
He becomes a goddamn lumberjack.
Did you hear about why that happened? Apparently, the writers. Well, I find this interesting. The writers wanted to kill him off. They filmed it, and Showtime were like, we don't want him to die in case we ever want to do like a comeback or a reunion or something. And so they had to film this extra scene where we find out he's still alive and he's a lumberjack.
And you know what? I remember? I think it was like that episode aired either the night before or the week before the final episode of Breaking Bad. So like you had 2 series finals of 2 like, you know, pretty high profile shows. And the way Breaking Bad ended it was just so amazingly fantastic. Like they just nailed the ending for that show. And then, you know, Dexter's just like, meh.
It'll forever be compared. They'll forever be compared to each other as a result of that. I think it might have even been the same night.
Element.
Yeah, no, but I think it might have been actually the same night. Because I remember when I went to watch it, and I know we get it later, but I had to choose, what do I watch first, Breaking Bad or Dexter? And it would have been a harder choice for me a few years before, but Breaking Bad clearly won because that Lowe's last season that was cut over 2 years was such an incredible piece of television. Let's get into these trailers, man, because we've gone off a bit of a tangent, but I enjoy our little tangents. Trailers. Let's go into a quick one. Halloween Kills. Very quick teaser. Came along with the announcement of sorry, we're being delayed
by one whole year.
Yeah, which is rough. I was so excited for that movie, but trailers looking. I'm pretty optimistic about the trailer. How about you?
Holy fuck, dude! This thing blew me away. I wasn't, because at first I saw the announcement of the delay, and I was like, oh man, that's a fucking bummer. And it was actually John Carpenter's Twitter that actually announced it. So he's like, here's this statement, blah blah. We're gonna delay it to 2021 October, or September, sorry. And, and then under that, he posted another tweet, and it was a 30-second kind of teaser. And I was like, oh, yes, let me dive into this. And it was just such a fantastic teaser. Jose Rivera posted this in the after party, and he said that if this is all the footage they show between now and the release date, I will be happy. And I 100% agree with him, dude. This is such a perfect teaser. It just shows you. I love the whole, we're going to kick this off pretty much immediately. The three generations of Strodes in the back of the pickup truck, they're kind of reeling from what the fuck just happened. They're both in shock. And then they see the fire brigade. And they're on their way to the house, to the Strode house, to the Strode residence. And they're going to try and put the fire out and, possibly save Michael. And it's just dude, Jamie Lee Curtis's intensity, I am just so on board with, dude.
She's great.
Let it burn, she says, dude. And I'm just fuck. And then we cut to black, and there it is, Halloween Kills. And then we get the quick shot of Michael Myers, and then we get the little sting from the John Carpenter score, the da-da-da. And I'm just oh, dude, yes. Just fuck yes, dude. Just so much yes.
I don't know who to credit and shout out if it's the marketing or the PR or the director or who, but I just want to say I think it's incredibly smart to do the teaser this way, because I think the thing that everyone is thinking and asking, especially the hardcore fans, is how is Michael Myers back? Because they've done this before. There's been another Halloween 2 twice. There's the Rob Zombie and the original one, and then there's also another weird reboot with H2O and stuff. And so they've always got to with slasher villains, they got to explain how they come back, and they're almost always some dumb supernatural bullshit. Mostly because these were from the 80s and 90s and shit.
But also, no one really cares about a really logical explanation. I don't give a fuck.
I think it's everyone's willing. It's not so much cares, but everyone's willing to give it a pass, because whatever gets us to see this awesome iconic character killing people, we'll let it happen. And
but not only that, it's also, I think Laurie's definitely tied into this as well now. This is what separates for me this franchise from the Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, right? Because those are the two the most comparable franchises. This puts it up there for me with Scream, because the heroine is just so damn fun to watch. Sydney Prescott to me is just so fun to watch because she's such a great heroine. Whereas same applies here to Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode.
You actually touch on something that's really important, and it's very much overlooked with slasher films. The biggest problem most franchises have is the lack of a likable protagonist. And Scream, I think, is one of the only franchises where your favorite couple of characters, the few mains, survive all three or all four even. And that's great, because that way we care about the characters who continue on. And that's very hard, because you look at a lot of slasher films, the poorly done ones especially, you don't give a shit. In fact, you're rooting for the killer. You want them to kill him. And
it's great, but at the same time, because you're using Scream, in the case of Scream, it's not great when you get to the sequels. All four of the leads should not be surviving. I'm sorry. We need one, at least one to go.
Well, in Scream 2, arguably the fan favorite was killed. The what's the guy who
Right.
says all the rules, and they had to really, the writers really had to scratch their brains to come up with a way to sort of bring back his reference in 3.
Man, like
He happened to have
left
a tape lying around.
He left it.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I'm talking about like the main characters, right? I mean, like, and they did in the first one. The first one showed that it had all the balls, right? When they killed fucking Drew Barrymore off, like it's like
So smart.
we have so much balls. We're gonna kill off the basically the lead of our movie, who you thought was the lead, rather.
They did what Godzilla did with Walter White.
Well,
Bryan Cranston.
they did what goddamn Psycho did, right? When they killed off
Right.
Marion in the shower. But like, it's like, there's no, again, it's really interesting to see a good female lead in a slasher. And,
Dude, I'll even say it's good to see a good lead in a slasher.
Yeah.
I'll even go that far because there's not a lot of great ones.
And that Halloween 2018, I've said this to you so many times, and I think I reviewed it on the podcast. Man, that is just such a confidently made it movie. Like, this director,
I agree.
David Gordon Green, is not known for films like that. Like, he does kind of like screwball comedies like Pineapple Express and stuff like that. And, when he directed this movie, I was just like, wow, this feels so confident, dude. Like, he just came out firing with this movie. It's
really incredible. In fact, I would say it's one of the more, one of the better slashers, especially in the modern era. Like, it's just fear. There's no cheese. It's serious and it's well made and it's great. And before we wrap this up, because I thought this would be a quick thing, it's definitely not. Before I forget, the other thing I wanted to touch on for what I think smart about how this teaser's done is they're also giving slight homage to the original where it's taking place the second it finishes. Because that's what happened with like both versions of Halloween 2. The only difference is like they're changing the events and everything, but the fact that it's happening straight away after, like that's not very common. How many other sequels do you know that happen literally seconds after the last one? There's not a lot.
But I love when it happens. Like, it's one of my favorite things. It's just like, well, we're going to kick this off. And like pretty much immediately where your character's left off. Like, I love that there's no time jump. Like, like it's not like, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, like Empire has a fucking time jump, right?
I would have said like something like It. But yeah, I guess what you mean. Yeah, Empire, most sequels really. I mean, that's the thing though, because with a lot of sequels, they got to like reestablish the characters and the themes and all that other stuff. This just hit the ground running. It does make me wonder with these sequels though, how do you write like an emotional character arc without retreading what you did before? And I guess also like, do we care? Like we just want to see Laurie and Michael Myers, but I think what made the last one so great is like this relationship of her sort of like PTSD, losing her mind, and her family sort of dealing with that. They've kind of, in a way, closed that arc, I think. Like they're now accepting of her because Michael Myers was what she said. I'm wondering what's the journey that happens there. And I'm sure they've thought this all out because they've really proven themselves the last film. But they're in an interesting corner they've painted themselves into that sequels usually don't have because of the time jump. And it makes me even more excited for the film. So yeah,
Absolutely.
That's really cool.
Sorry, I just kind of got to thinking about sequels that take place immediately after the first one. And there are a few, but like it's interesting. Like, Rogue One. No, Rogue One, takes place directly before 4, but I don't consider that. But start like episode 7 and then episode 8, like, pretty much immediately. Back to the Future is a good one, dude. Because like Back to the Future is like, like literally they're standing on the same street and like it's basically seamless. Another one that was really good was Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace.
Ooh.
Like it pretty much starts immediately right after when Mr. White's like kind of like in the boot of his car. Yeah, it's pretty good, man. Pretty good stuff. Like I really like the whole continuation element of it.
Cool. Let's move on. We got a trailer for a Netflix project called Project Power, I think it's called, with Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Is this a show or a film? Like, it's a show, right?
No, it's a film.
Oh, right. Cool. I was gonna say, like, if this is a show, fuck, man, the budget. You got 2 huge actors. You got a pretty cool concept. The special effects look nuts, and I'm loving the cinematography and the color palette of this film, this project. It's very kind of like what the DC universe were doing a little bit, I suppose. But It looks really you're talking about confident films. Like this looks pretty confident with what they're doing. It's an interesting concept of what is it? So it's you take a pill and you get a superpower, but you don't know what superpower you're going to get. That's interesting. I think that's an interesting take, and I think the world building you could do around this concept, I think, really opens yourself up to some interesting concepts. I'm keen for this project. I'm keen to see this film, man. What do you think?
Yeah, I was keen for this movie when it was titled Limitless. I remember that one.
Wait, oh, really?
Oh,
is this attached to?
No.
Oh, wait,
no.
oh, sorry.
Same
I thought
concept.
yeah, sorry. I thought you were going to say this was a sequel to Limitless. I'm like, wait, what?
No. Same concept.
You're right.
Yeah,
Take a pill. You're awesome. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, like, look, it's pretty much like I'm pretty sure Limitless didn't come up with that fucking idea too. Like, it's kind of like a dream kind of concept, right? Like, you can take you can take a pill and fucking cure cancer, right? Like, it's just a thing. So I do like the premise of this, like, and the trailer of this looks pretty badass. You know, the action sequences look great. I'm always there for Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. You know, I talked 2 weeks ago about 7500, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's acting range. I love him so much. There is something worrying me though, and it's the two directors, Henry Joost and Ariel Schulman. They directed the only other two movies they've directed are Paranormal Activity 3 and 4. So I'm just like, how did Netflix give these guys what looks like a pretty decent budget for a movie like this?
Huh. Well, I guess those movies, they all made money. I guess, even though they all felt incredibly cheap. But this film does not feel cheap at all. Huge actors, the VFX looks great. I'm loving the visuals of it all. Yeah, man. I don't know. I'm keen for this. Director or what? I think a lot of the time too, it's the producers that are attached because they can sometimes boss around a director depending on who they are.
You know me, I never go after producer. I'm just like, look, ever since I saw Christopher Nolan's name attached to Batman vs Superman, I just see ya producer credit. You mean nothing to me anymore.
That's fair. Shall we move on to reviews?
Who are you? You can call me Andy. I lead a group of soldiers. Fighters, like you. With an extremely rare skill set.
What do you mean? Mother?
Let's just say we're very hard to kill.
Loved it. Like, really loved it. Yeah, I fucking enjoyed this movie, dude. I actually listened to an interview with the writer of this movie, Greg Rucka. He's also the guy who penned the comic book for this that it was adapted on. He was talking about...
So the comic book writer wrote the screenplay as well.
Correct.
So it was,
wow. Something that does
rare.
not happen. Yeah, something that does not happen a lot.
Okay.
So he was talking about how basically he used the film as kind of like a way to improve his comic book. Like, he's like, you know, like this is something that I that I've always been wanting to do, like, in, you know, like ways that, like, when I finished the comic book, I was like, okay, you know what, maybe you can use this, maybe you can use that. And this is kind of like his pure kind of like vision. And, you know, he was like talking about like how Charlize Theron in his mind is the character, like, you know, is the character that he imagined. Like, he talked about like how there was, you know, some compromises that needed to be made, because there was initially like how there was initially a scene that featured Charlize Theron in an action scene in a staircase, and Charlize is like, oh, well, you know, I've already kind of done a staircase action scene in this little movie that you might know as Atomic Blonde.
Okay, probably the reason why you wanted me in this film.
Right, pretty much. So, you know, it was really interesting listening to that interview. I listened to that on Fat Man Beyond, which is, you know, Kevin Smith and Mark Bernardin's podcast. If anyone wants to go check that out, highly recommend. But yeah, man, like, the Old Guard was fantastic. Like, really, really solid. You know, it's got its issues, mainly probably in the acting department. Anyone who isn't Charlize or Kiki Lane, I think Kiki Lane does a great job as Niall. She's the young girl. Anyone who is not those two kind of has a little bit of a, I don't know, you're trying a little hard here.
Yeah.
And also, sorry, I don't mean to talk shit about my boy Chiwetel Ejiofor, because that guy's awesome too. But you know, he's a little underused in this. Like I was like, oh man, like you're Baron Mordo in fucking Doctor Strange. Like you need.
He does chew the scene, or he does chew the scene up a little bit when he acts. Like he really does take control of the scene. He is great. He's a great presence in this film, I would say.
Yeah, totally. But I think obviously the standout of this is the action, right? I mean, like the action sequences are fantastically directed. You know, it's not, you know, if you compare it to something like Extraction or like, you know, the Atomic Blonde or like John Wick, it's not up to that standard because I don't think they have the budget for it, but it's still above average. Like, you know, it's still above your standard like Spencer Confidential action film. Like, you know, like sorry, Spencer Confidential. But I do like the premise of this. Like I like the idea of like these ancient beings who have discovered that they can't die, pretty much trying to change the world. And I love that we are able to give it stakes by them telling us that they don't know when they can die. They can die, but they have no idea. Like, you know, it's a really good kind of like, because it can get boring. Like, you know, if you are watching someone on God mode like mow through a bunch of like bad guys, then it just gets boring, right? You know, it's
the problem all writers have with Superman, pretty much.
It's the Superman thing,
and,
right? Exactly.
And usually the only way they get around it is the people they like, or that they come up with some bullshit like that, or it's like, oh, your friends and family are in danger, so they're the stakes.
Right.
This is a good way to get around that problem.
Exactly, and it's just like they use it pretty creatively, I think, in this movie as well. Like, you know, like the whole like that, like exactly what they're afraid of. I think Charlize is just continues to prove what an amazing actress she is. Like she's just you know, this isn't like her top tier film or anything like that. Like she does a good job with what she's given. But yeah, I think, you know, it's an above average action film with a good ending and a amazingly satisfying bad guy death. Because I hated the bad guy in this, dude.
He's such a fuck stain.
His eyes are too close together, and
I was gonna say the same thing. Fuck.
Like he's so like white and pasty and British, and it's just terrible, dude.
I
like,
think of him as discount Jesse Eisenberg, but like
from Batman vs Superman. I was just about to say that too.
But there was something went wrong in the factory, and like the form. It's like, you know, in Team America World Police, where like they fucked up the puppet for Matt Damon, so they were like, "Oh, just make it. He's like retarded." There we go. That's what happened.
Yeah,
here.
No, that's what I feel like. I feel like someone made him in like a factory, and he was made out of plastic, but like there was like a sunroof, and like the sun just beat down on him all day, so his like face melted a little bit, and like his eyes just came together a little bit. Like, you know, he's just I mean, but look, he does a good job. I mean, like, no, he doesn't do a good job. Like he's awful. I hate this character.
Look, we're supposed to hate the character, so in that sense, he did his job. He's servicely. He did what he needed to do. We were supposed to hate him, and we hated him.
But I like his number two, the heavy, right? Like this guy, the big guy. The actress's name is Joey Ansah. I recognized him immediately. He was actually from The Bourne Ultimatum, which is the third one, which is the best one. And he was one of the assets. His name was Desh in that movie, and he was fucking like, they get into this like fist fight in Morocco in that movie. It's fucking badass. But yeah, man, like pretty good movie. You know, would I watch a sequel that it absolutely sets up? Hell fucking yeah, I would. Would I watch this movie again? Probably not, but I definitely I'm in the world. I'm in the world. So I'm probably going to give it maybe a 7.5, maybe about an 8. I'm not giving halves, actually. I'm giving it an 8.
Cool. I'm a little less positive on this film, but I think I'm agreeing with you with most of your points. My biggest problem, though, is I was really not invested for like the first act. Like I struggled I was so bored at first. I think it was because like I just had this problem where every time Charlize was not on screen, I fell asleep. Like I really don't like the people on her team. Like, and I don't think it's the actor's faults completely, because I think there is some really crappy dialogue. Like there's a scene where this is later on in the film, but like it just stood out to me how wooden it was. It might have been done intentionally, but like it's where that dude's trying to like talk about how much he loves his boyfriend to this guy who's beating the shit out of him. And like he gives him this huge poem, which feels like, it's like, yeah, I guess you could say he's like 1,000 million years old. So it came from like ancient Egypt times or some shit. But it felt like someone wrote this on a keyboard and he just delivered the lines. And he was trying his best to act it out. And there was a whole bunch of that shit, especially in the first half of the film.
I love their relationship. Like that was so well done. Like, it was just like, let's not shine too much of a spotlight on this. Let's just make it happen. Like, it's just,
you know what?
It happens.
I did appreciate that from the stance that I haven't seen that before. I haven't seen a gay superhuman, superpowered couple in a film that are like the main supporting characters in a way. And because it gave them like a bit of extra layer of depth. So they weren't two-dimensional. So I like that. I appreciated the fact that they weren't two-dimensional characters. And what was cool is like when one would suffer, you would think about it made me think about the other one and like, oh, what is he thinking because he's seeing this? Like, especially when they're getting tortured in front of each other. It gave us like a little bit of stakes for those minor characters, which was cool. I think it was great. But yeah, I did find for the first bunch, just I think through all the exposition and stuff, just like, it really took me a while to get interested in this film. I think I started to get converted when I started realizing it was essentially trying to be like the Matrix, where, oh, you're like the chosen one or whatever. You're like the special person. Oh no, our mentors got kidnapped. Let's go on this journey. We've got to fight back. Like, I guess like maybe the Matrix is not the best comparison, but I'm seeing it evolve and I'm seeing the stakes increase as it goes on. And so it starts off as something I'm finding a bit boring, but it started winning me over scene by scene. And I can't remember the last time that's happened with the film. And by the end of it, like I started off really bored. I was actually legitimately bored. And then about the halfway point, like I really cared. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm actually starting, some of these characters I didn't like before starting to grow on me. I liked what's going on. Even with the villain, while he was annoying as fuck and I hated him, his motivations were clear and they weren't too convoluted, which I know sounds like, it's like, oh, Matt, it's not much to ask for. But in this day and age of blockbuster like action films, I think it is. Like there's some like really bad generic villains we're seeing. And while he is kind of on the like kind of generic in a way, at least his motivations were clear. And it was just very like, okay, I understand everyone's position. I can understand why there's drama and that's good reason of conflict. That's great. Obviously Charlize is great. I do find the action, it's not bad. It's just like, there was no scene or special moment that wowed me. Like there were no like, oh, this is a unique action scene. It's just people getting shot in a room together. And so, and like, I think the one chance they had to make that stand out was, Charlize Theron's character had this special weapon. It was like some sort of Aztec bladed staff. Right. And it has got this interesting design at the top. I thought that was cool, but like they never did anything cool with it. I think they could have done something special there. And I feel like it was a bit of a missed opportunity. Because like, even when like, the mentoree character was trying to save them and she brings it in, I'm like, oh, okay, it's going to lead to some like badass moment. No, nothing. It's just, I
don't know. I think the fact that she carries around like a 3,000-year-old battle axe is cool enough, and like in my opinion,
but she barely uses it though. You know, like there's like I feel like they're not treating. It's not like Captain America's shield or Thor's hammer. Like the silhouette of that item is pretty cool. It looks cool. So make it cool. Like do some cool like fucking moves with it, or do a cool like kill with it, or it was just there. And like there's nothing wrong with it just being there, but you could have like given me a moment to wow me with it, and like they missed out on that, unfortunately. But yeah, I did see just a lot of potential where I'm seeing an okay, all right film, but I think it did have the potential to be amazing, maybe not amazing, but really great. Because they did do some decent world building, and they did something we don't see a lot these days. They set up a sequel with it still feeling like standalone, and that at the very least I really respect. There were no like major loose ends, but they still had some doors open for us to go to. It still felt like a complete whole story. They weren't like a leader battle angeling us. So
I'm just really keen to see how that woman came back, the one that drowned.
Right, yeah. Look, I'll be honest, when I saw her like drowning and we never see her die, I'm like, Oh, she's coming back. She's coming back.
Did you like? I didn't get that at all. Like, I was like, man, what a fucking cruel like way to go.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
you know, like what a way to actually kill these immortal beings while not actually killing them. You know, like what a way to doom them to eternity.
Honestly, that could have been like one of the main moments that helped me switch over, because those really raise the stakes, because the way they die is like it's a fate worse than death. Like, what if you buried someone alive?
It's a prison. You're drowning forever. Like, it's just it's such a great idea.
And when you die, you wake up and you die again. But to be honest, when I saw that, I thought they were setting up like in the generic, you know, in the third act. It was actually me all along, haha, because I wanted revenge, and like you find out she was secretly working with him.
Sometimes I love it.
Well, like that's the like I guess that's the obvious way to go. But then I forgot that we're in 2020, where no, instead of doing that, what you do is you use it to set up a cinematic universe, or at least a sequel.
Yeah, see, like I don't know, like I let myself get caught up in it. Like I try not to, you know, unless it's like Marvel or DC or something like that, then I'm just like. I let myself get caught up in it, like, you know.
I don't have a choice. It just comes to me. It's like they're knocking. It's like someone's tapped me on the shoulder. I'm like, these are the possibilities now. It's
see, we're spoiled. Like, you know, we're spoiled these days.
That is the problem, and I think that's why when there's an amazing film that really wows me, it's like extra special to me now, because like if you're able to help me get lost in that world when I've seen how the sausage is made so many times, that's really special. So, anyways, I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10 because at the end of the day, like, yeah, I had some problems. At the end of the day, I kind of had a good time. It took me a while to start having a good time, but I did have a good time at the end. The action was good enough, but just nothing like really, it was very not memorable to me. That's why I don't think I would watch it again, but I would watch a sequel. So yeah, 7 out of 10.
When I was a kid, there was a place. A dark place. They closed it down and let it rot. But the things that lived there... they come back.
So the director's cut of Dr. Sleep is interesting. I wasn't initially going to talk about this, you know, until I picked it. I actually went out and bought it on Blu-ray because, you know, it's not streaming or anything. And, you know, I'm very easily influenced. I was actually going to bring this up on the Real Blend podcast, like episode where we interviewed Sean, but they interviewed Mike Flanagan, who's the director of Dr. Sleep, and you know, like that interview just swung me into buying the fucking Blu-ray, dude. I'm just like, I'm thinking, Sean, like, you know, you're making like financial decisions for me now. Like, what the fuck? But
I think before you get in, or maybe you touch on this, but I think the main thing I want to know is what is different about the director's cut to the theatrical cut.
Yeah,
and is there a reason why there's a director's cut?
Yeah, so I mean, like I'll get into just quickly what the interview was about, like the gist of it. So it was no, that's all right. So it was Mike Flanagan talking about just how much he felt unshackled when with this particular cut. This is a 3-hour cut. Like, this is a 3-hour movie. Like, dude, The Godfather is 3 hours long. Like, you know, and the first cut of Dr. Sleep is not. It's no slash either. Like, it's 2.5 hours. So it's already a long movie. With this, and
it feels long to me. It really does.
It like, you know, there are moments where it does feel long. In my opinion, I think Dr. Sleep is just such a fantastic follow up to The Shining, man. Like, I am like lost when I watch it. Like, you know, I was watching this 3-hour cut, and I'm just like, man, like, I feel like they pulled it off. Like, you know, like Mike Flanagan's, you can tell that there's just so much love for Kubrick's Shining. Like, he worked very closely with Stephen King, like, on set. Like, and King was actually like, you know, and King is very famously against Stanley Kubrick's Shining. Like, he hates it. Like, he actually hates it. So King was like, can we not use like the original look of the Overlook Hotel? And Mike Flanagan's just like, well, dude, I mean, like, all of pop culture knows Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. So
yeah, that's the reason people are going. Yeah.
Right. This is the, like, yeah, exactly. It's the reason, like, you know, it's all over our marketing, whatever. Like, it has to be used. So, you know, Warner Brothers actually like let them use like the original plans, and he's talking about like how Kubrick didn't really care about like the structure of the Overlook. So like, if you'd go into room 237 and, if you look to the left and then you take another left, technically that should open out into the hallway, but it doesn't. Like there's just another room there. So, like he's talking about like how Kubrick didn't really care about structure and stuff like that. So it made it a real bitch for them to kind of like recreate the set. But then again, he also acknowledges how the Overlook Hotel is an entity unto itself. Like, it's kind of like its own sort of like, it's kind of like its own living thing, like breathing thing. So it makes sense for Stanley Kubrick's Overlook Hotel to have dead ends where there shouldn't be dead ends, like different kind of like hallways where there shouldn't be hallways. Like, it makes sense that this entire hotel's layout does not make sense. So he was talking about that as he's like making it, and like I'm just thinking, man, like if I could like travel back through time and like tell Stanley Kubrick in 1980 as he's making this movie that someone will be doing the exact same thing like with your sets in 40 years, like what like an amazing conversation like Mike Flanagan would have with Stanley Kubrick like together, like I don't know, like it just kind of like got me thinking. But like look, getting to the actual movie, holy shit, I'm sorry. Getting to the actual movie, this feels like a more just a whole movie. Like there's just so many more. The characters are just so much more fleshed out. Like there's the actual like gypsies. It's the Rose the Hat who's played by Rebecca Ferguson. Like they're just so much more fleshed out, and you get a bit more of a sense as to who they are and what they do and why they do what they do. Like they're kind of like basically they feed off the fear of children, and it's just so like okay, like that's such a Stephen King thing. And then you've kind of got Dan Torrance, who is dealing with sobriety. Like this movie is all about sobriety on the part of Dan Torrance, where his father's movie, The Shining, was all about alcoholism. Like there's like a whole theory where Jack Torrance would often beat Danny because he was alcoholic. Like that's the whole thing. So this is Dan actually becoming like he's 8 years sober, and he talks about it like I'm 8 years sober, and Flanagan makes a conscious decision to not let Ewan McGregor speak too much throughout the movie until we get to the scene where he meets his father in the Overlook Hotel. Then we get like this long ass dialogue where it's like I think 5 minutes unbroken of like just Ewan McGregor telling him how he feels about his father. And it's just like, well, this is like it just makes it feel like more effective, The directing and editing in this particular cut is just so much more astounding too, because it's like there's these weird like cuts, like they kind of like it's just unsettling cuts. Like the movie starts off with this young girl walking, like straying away from her parents and walking towards the river to Rose the Hat. And, she's trying to lure him in, lure her in. And, she's talking to this young girl, and the young girl would look over out into the woods. And as the girl looks, you just see like a quick cut of like someone standing there in the woods. And then you cut back. And then, she's like, oh, who's that person in the woods? And then Rose the Hat's like, that's just my friend. Don't worry about him. She looks again. There's like 5 people there. And it's just like cut back. And it's just like, there's like little things like that where it's just like really unsettling cinema. And I think Mike Flanagan has just nailed this kind of thing where like he did this in Haunting of Hill House, where it's just like just visual storytelling, but also like visual horror. Like he's like solely like nestled himself into the horror genre. Like, have you seen Hush?
Yeah.
I love Hush. Like I love the concept. I love the way it's filmed. I still think The Haunting of Hill House is the best thing he's made, but Doctor Sleep is just it's insane to me how you can make a fascinating Shining sequel so belatedly, like like just so like it's so engaging from start to finish. Like the music in it too, it's also got that like heartbeat kind of sound. It's like duk, 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 and it's just like, man, like he's walking through the fucking Overlook, and it's just like the Overlook is the weakest part of the movie. Like like the part that you set up, like the whole 2.5 hours before that you set up with Danny is just so much more engaging, because Danny himself as a character trying to help this young girl who also has The Shine. Man, I don't know. Like it's tough to explain. Like this movie had an effect on me. And I came so close to giving this a 10. It's actually a fucking masterpiece. I'm probably going to give it a 9, to be honest, because like it does. I think 3 hours does go on for a bit long, but I just think the way it's filmed, I think the way it's scored, the way it's acted, there's really nothing negative that I can say about this movie. Like there's just not. I'm sorry. Like it's just not. Like other than that it's long, maybe a bit over long. That's it. But it's just like it's dripping with just visual storytelling.
I find it really interesting that so you and me pretty much every fortnight review films together, and we often, without talking beforehand, end up on very similar scores. Even when we come at it from completely different angles, like just then with The Old Guard, I was a lot more negative than you, and we were pretty much only separated by 1 point. But I feel like Doctor Sleep is the only film where I respect your opinion, but I disagreed on so many levels. And I feel like there are so many, I know I'm in the minority on this film because I know there's some hardcore fans of Doctor Sleep. And like, I totally respect that. And I can see why so many people would love this movie. And I haven't seen the director's cut, I've only seen the theatrical. But like, it really doesn't get me. Hey, like, I wish I loved it the way you loved it.
There's 2 factors that we need to consider before like anyone needs to consider like what you have to say. You haven't seen The Shining in a very long time, right?
Yeah, that is true. But I know enough. I remember enough, and I know the iconic shots.
It's not about knowing. It's not about knowing. It's about watching and experiencing. You need to watch.
Okay.
You need to watch The Shining, and then you need to watch Doctor Sleep. Like you can't be like, I'm familiar with The Shining and its loose story. No, you need to be aware of like the shots and the shot composition and like the way things are.
And I know the iconic ones that are recreated here. I just feel like... Sorry, go on. What's the second point?
Oh, the second point is you've only seen it once, and that was back in November.
Yeah, but it really... Like, I remember being bored in the theater. I just think, even comparing it to The Shining, I feel like it's such a completely different film. Like...
It is a different film. I'm not saying it's exactly the same.
I feel like if the sequel to Star Wars was Indiana Jones, you'd be like, what the fuck is happening here? Because it's so... different, and while the themes and the characters are still there and the elements, and I can see how you go from Shining to that, but I just feel like it's kind of jarring how different it is. And I know I'm in the minority on this one, and I do respect, like, you know, the shots are great, but like I hate how quiet Ewan McGregor's character is for like most of the film because it's so long and he's so like being reserved and subtle with his performance. And I understand why people would like that and think it's good, but it really doesn't grab me. And I wish I could love it the way everybody else does. I really
don't know. Like, okay, so for me, I love that he's being quiet and reserved because he's constantly being visited by ghosts. Like he's constantly being like, you know, I talk enough to the dead that I don't really need to talk to the living. Like, you know, like I'm good.
Yeah. And
like even to the point where I'd prefer to speak to the dead.
Well, let's move on to film number 3, last one for today, and that is King of Staten Island.
People told me slow my roll.
I want to become a real tattoo artist.
Your work is mad inconsistent. Obama ain't right.
Oh, I love your tattoos. This is my favorite.
I've been dating someone for a little while now.
The first guy you date in 17 years is a fireman, just like that? You don't think that's weird?
You're gonna have to pull your weight a little more around here. Maybe help Ray get his kids to school.
Kelly, do you know him?
He's a new friend.
You okay? You know, you could tell me.
I'm okay.
Oh, I trained her in the car. She's not gonna break.
So, The King of Staten Island. This was a movie that we watched literally like 2 nights ago at the cinema. This was the first movie since Bloodshot that I've seen at the movies that is a brand new film.
Fuck, same. Oh my God.
That is, what is that? So between March, what is that? April, May, June, July, August. 5 months? 6 months?
That's too long. That is way too long. That sucks, man.
It's not even August. What am I doing? But anyway, so like, you know, it's, man, what a return to the movies. Like I was so glad that we decided to watch this at the movies. And like, this is, you can rent this, you know, like I'm sure you can rent this at the movies, at home and have a great time with it. I don't know. There's just something about, you know, like sitting in a cold, dark cinema and being just like totally immersed in like Judd Apatow's storytelling. And I think that this is one of Judd Apatow's best films in a very long time, man. Like this feels so strong. Yeah. Like all of the characters are very likable, but at the same time unlikable. I don't think that Scott is particularly likable, but at the same time, I don't think that's what he's going for. Like, you know, like he's not going for a, you know, he should be immediately likable immediately. Like that's not storytelling. That's not a character arc.
He's a very flawed character, and the character is aware of his flaws.
Right.
It's funnily enough, I would compare him to a protagonist like Scott Pilgrim, another Scott, where so many people will just not like the main character because he just does some dick moves. But I think the actor's performance is so charismatic and likable that you're willing to like be on that journey with them.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. It's interesting to watch him because Pete Davidson carries himself like really well on camera, and like, you know, like the way he responds to his mother, played by Marissa Tomei. Like some of the best scenes of the movie are just them two, like kind of like talking to each other. You know, like it's kind of like heartbreaking and it's kind of heartwarming at the same time. Bill Burr is absolutely fantastic in this too. Like he's like the first time you see him, dude, he's just laugh out loud hilarious, man. Like laugh out loud. And like, you know, he's also got like some very deep moments too. I think what really sealed the deal for me though with this movie was the meta-ness of it. Like the whole, you know, Pete Davidson's real life actual father was a firefighter who died in 9/11 when one of the towers collapsed. And the movie, you know, they write this into the movie, except he died in a hotel fire. But then you have like actual firefighters like Steve Buscemi, who was retired by the time 9/11 happened, and then he went out and actually volunteered with the firefighters to help out during 9/11. I don't know if they actually knew each other. Unfortunately, didn't get to do that research, whether their fathers actually knew each other. But to see a actual real life firefighter talk to Pete Davidson, whose father was a real life firefighter and who has this animosity towards firefighters like his whole life, you know, he's kind of like he hates them. Like he hates the profession. Like he's coming at it from like such a selfish standpoint where it's like, well, if you're a firefighter and you're constantly risking your life, why the fuck are you selfish enough to have kids and a family? Like, you know, why? Like you just shouldn't. And then just Steve Buscemi's character comes back with the best response, dude, and it's actually kind of it's gonna make me cry. He's just like, it's tough because his delivery was so good. He's just like, he's a hero. He deserves to have a family. And I'm just like, man, like that's perfect. It's just perfect storytelling. So yeah, man, like that's the part that really sealed the deal for me. Like most Apatow films, it goes on for long. But I didn't feel it with this movie at all. Like I don't feel it with Knocked Up. Like I don't feel it with 40-Year-Old Virgin. I think he weirdly does long films perfectly. Like he does the pacing really perfectly. Like he just makes the characters so likable and so watchable that it's just like, okay, like I'm along for the ride. So yeah, man, I really enjoyed this movie. This is one of Judd Apatow's best films that he's put out so far, and it just continues to show how good of a not only comedy director he is, but this is an out and out drama. Like I'm not going to call this a comedy at all. This is a drama. This is something that should be nominated for a screenplay award. I'm sorry, like that is it is that good in my opinion. So I'm going to give this a 9.
Yeah, this movie is great. It's interesting, so because if you compare it to something like 40-Year-Old Virgin or Trainwrecked, where the comedy is really at the forefront, this has a lot of comedy in it. In fact, most scenes, more than less, would make you laugh, but the drama is so much more in front that it really defines, I think, the phrase dramedy really well, because the drama really is in front of that. I think this movie is very authentic. It's very authentic in the sense that, like, obviously it's almost semi-autobiographical of Pete Davidson. Obviously, many elements different, but there's taken so much inspiration from his life and who he is that it really comes into play. Weirdly enough, I would compare this movie to 8 Mile, because that's a film, you know, that inspired by Eminem. He's still playing an original character, but the things that make his story interesting were there. And funnily enough, like both films kind of end in a similar way, where they're both chasing a dream, but they never achieve that dream, but they still have a place to go where they still could potentially. Because it's not about, they sort of trick you. They sort of trick you into thinking it's about this really physical journey. Like, this guy wants to be a tattoo artist. He's going to go for this. But, he never opens his tattoo restaurant. He never even gets an apprenticeship. Is that one scene with Machine Gun Kelly where he just straight up gets rejected for even a fucking internship. And, but like, so you may think that's the journey going, but no, it's so much more. It's the metaphysical journey, the emotional, the mental journey of how he realizes. I would compare this to, if anyone out there is a big fan, like BoJack Horseman, because I think that's the best portrayal of depression in TV by far, and it's a great look at a flawed character who has reasons for why they are, has reasons to be depressed, has reasons to be insecure and doubt themselves, but they end up self-sabotaging and end up using, at one point gets to a point where they start using that as an excuse for their kind of shitty behavior. And that's what this character's journey goes on. And it's like really actually inspiring and relatable, where you sort of realize sometimes you can put up your own wall blocks in life, and how, you might be suffering, but your suffering can affect the people around you. And it's really, you have to like learn to like be aware of that. And I think so many people out there could relate to these situations. I think it's very authentic with the world it is too, like the people he's talking to and the things he's doing. Like I could see, like I know people, I've seen people on the screen and like, oh, I know something like that. But this film, like you think that would be enough for most films to just be great, but they go an extra step further with this relationship with his mum's boyfriend, played by Bill Burr, and the way that he learns about himself and his dad through this guy who they don't really like each other for the most part, like, but then they grow to have an understanding of each other. And it's so authentically done and acted and directed. It's pretty amazing, actually, when I think about it. It's been a while since I've seen a film that wasn't like a typical Hollywood movie that's, something like Pixar or something that's actually really got to me and made me think. And it's helped me appreciate, like, the genre of drama more, to be honest. If I'm being real with you, like, I remember after the film just going, like, they never did anything big and flashy. Like, what the worst part is, like, you got thrown into a pool. Like, that's the biggest scale thing. Like, this film is the complete opposite.
Bigger doesn't mean better, right?
Yeah, but there's like no spectacle. Like you look at like his other films, like 40-Year-Old Version, Trainwrecked in particular, Hell Even Knocked Up a bit. There's really these big trailer moments. And I remember I was actually thinking the other day, I was watching a trailer of King of Staten Island for some reason, it popped up. And it was funny, I was watching a YouTube video and two different ads for the same movie popped up in this one video. And I realized in both ads contained a lot of shots and dialogue not in the movie. And I think it must have been like, it's a hard movie to sort of market and push. There are no huge draws in terms of names to go see. And like there's not a lot of spectacle. So you really, really have to be invested in the characters and the journey they're on. And this is done so well. I never crossed my mind before, but you said it, and I think you're right. This could be a contender for best screenplay. I think it's pretty fucking good, man. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, I really enjoyed this film.
The things you can do with just a good story, eh? Like seriously, it's just a good story. That's it. Like there's no flashy moments in it. Like you said, there's no explosions. There's no kind of like there's a short gunfight, but like it's nothing crazy.
Oh, and even that, it's done like through the perspective of someone, for the most part, who's not even in the store. Like they do show some stuff, but it's such a small element of the story. Yeah, man, I think this movie is very well done, and I can see why. It also reminded me why people like true story films so much. And while this isn't a true story, it's clearly inspired by a lot of elements. And
that's my ballpark.
Yeah, I think what's also great and works to the advantage is all these actors are basically playing themselves. Like Pete Davidson sounds like Pete Davidson. Bill Burr, like all his strengths are in play here. He's literally playing a middle-aged man who loves sports and gets mad, has a short temper and yells. Like that's his entire brand. Yeah, like that's his brand. Like Judd is not asking much from these actors in terms of portraying someone they're not, but he still is able to find a way to direct them in such amazing ways. And maybe that was part of his directorial decision, like to help them get in that mindset. They're already in a similar mindset as they are. Obviously, he couldn't have made this movie without Pete because it's so much like Pete. Anyways, I've rambled on for way too long. 9 out of 10 for sure. I don't know why I'm not giving it a 10. Like I am pretty tempted to give it a 10. I don't know why I'm not though.
Wow,
I like it that much though. But yeah,
very, very critical thinking. I like.
Like honestly, like what bad things do I have to say about this movie?
I just thought it was a little long, maybe, but yeah.
See, okay, that's a good point because I remember at one point thinking, oh, this is the end of the movie. They're wrapping shit up. This is how a movie ends. Nope, it went on for like another 20 minutes, and I was weirdly so okay with it because it stopped feeling like a movie, even though it never really did, and just started feeling like life. Like this, every step was the next natural progression of what someone would do in this situation, and nothing ever. It was everything just fell into place so well. So I was really okay with the time. I wouldn't think I would be, but I so was. Also, real quick, this movie's funny as fuck. When I laughed, I really laughed, man. It's just so, and I love how like the comedy is just so naturally organic in this film too. There's no like big scene where like I know you're waxing someone's chest and they're screaming. It's just someone said something funny to the other person because they're too invested in something they shouldn't be. Yeah,
I'm reminded by something that someone said recently, and like they kind of looked at like their old, like I think it was Steven Spielberg's like filmography, and basically they kind of looked at like something like Jaws, and then like they looked at something like Jurassic Park, where it's like the director has come a long way technically. Like, like this is like technically when you look at 40-Year-Old Virgin, if you go back, I watched it recently. It is still a great movie, but it feels very slapshot. Like, it feels like Judd Apatow's first movie, which it is. It's his first movie. Whereas like this feels a lot more, while long, it feels a lot more refined. It feels like a director who really set out to tell a story, like whereas 40-Year-Old Virgin is like, let's get this guy laid.
Yeah, I think like 40-Year-Old Virgin, like the title's a joke, let alone itself, But I think, the big differentiating factor here, when you compare this to a lot of other films in his career, except for maybe Funny People, I'd say Funny People is the only other film of his I can think of.
That is such a mature film.
Exactly, and that's what I'm getting at. Like both films their goal is not we're making a comedy to make you laugh. It's we're telling a story with a message, and we'll make you laugh along the way, perhaps. Because the other, like 40-Year-Old Virgin, its main primary function and goal is to entertain you. This and make you laugh and enjoy, have a good time. That's not the goal of this film. This film is like, we want you to learn. We want our characters to learn and develop. And as a result, I think those are like two films made for completely different audiences, And I think some people who like 40-Year-Old Virgin won't like King of Staten Island, and some people like King of Staten Island won't like 40-Year-Old Virgin or Trainwreck or whatever. But those people like King of Staten Island, they might like Funny People, because it's like the same, I think, philosophy in going in and what Judd set out to do. Yeah, I love this movie, man. I will see it again for sure.
Cool. Nice.
And speaking of Judd Apatow, Zoheb, what's going on with the MDF game this week?
Yeah, so the MDF game, we asked you guys, we asked the after party, what is your favorite movie directed by Judd Apatow, right? And, Matt and I, we can't really guess each other's. Or well, actually, maybe I can guess yours. You already know mine. We kind of had a conversation before The King of Staten Island to determine which of Judd Apatow's is my favorite film. So yeah, you can go ahead and tell everyone.
Yours is Knocked Up.
Yes, mine is Knocked Up. I love Knocked Up. It is one of those movies that, King of Staten Island, while a fantastic film, I think it's a lot more of a drama than it is a comedy. And 40-Year-Old Virgin is a lot more of a comedy than it is a drama, whereas Knocked Up is right in the middle. Like, Knocked Up is both hilarious and at the same time really dramatic. Like Seth Rogen, dude, people forget that when he can turn on the acting charm, he can act. Like, if you've seen Steve Jobs, the Danny Boyle film, you know that Seth Rogen is an acting powerhouse, dude, when he can act, The movie tells a pretty damn good story about maturing, and like growing out of childhood and like learning responsibilities and learning to do things learning not only to look after an actual baby, but to look after yourself first before you look after a baby. It's just such a fantastic movie in that way that it's just it's kind of transformative to be honest.
It's funny. You just made me realize. Sorry,
Yeah.
you just made me realize. Judd Apatow films. They're kind of like coming of age films for adults. Like usually, coming of age films about like a child, but it's like an adult learning to adult a lot of the time, and they make you laugh a long way. It seems like a common theme throughout. Sorry, go on.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Like it's definitely a coming of age film. So yeah, man. But like, not only that, man. Like then you've got like the little kind of like the good shit like sprinkled on top, right? So you got the Jonah Hill, you got the Jason Segel, the Jay Baruchel. Like, dude, like I will never forget the first time I heard like like Jay Baruchel coming out of the toilet and Jonah Hill's just going off on him. He's like, did you shave your pubes on the toilet? Like every time I go to take a shit, it comes out looking like a stuffed animal. And I'm just like, oh my God, dude. Like lines like that. And then, you've got Bill Hader, who is one of my favorite people on the entire planet. By the way, like, should I tell this story now? Fuck it, I'll tell the story now. I met Bill Hader. Like I shook hands with Bill Hader.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, I love you. Like, like I just goddamn love you. I met him and Amy Schumer on the red carpet for Trainwreck, which was surreal, dude. Like, I mean, like I really didn't know Amy Schumer back then very much, but I definitely knew Bill Hader, for getting Sarah Marshall and Superbad, blah blah. But yeah, man, like his moments in Knocked Up are just absolutely incredible. Like, you look like Jabba the Hutt dying, like and I love it all. I love it all. So Knocked Up is definitely 100% my favorite, dude. Should I guess yours?
Yeah, man.
Let me guess yours. So yours is yours is 40-year-old virgin.
Zoheb, you are correct, sir.
I knew it.
It was hard to pick, but it's such a classic. Like people put it up there with Step Brothers for a reason. It's just so iconic. There are so many quotes, and there's so many people who just discovered through that. I think it's just an easy pick. I don't feel like I have to justify it. It's just great. But I will say Funny People was a really close because I don't know what it is, but that movie really stuck with me. I haven't seen it in a
Adam
while,
Sandler
though.
being serious.
Yeah. It's just, it shows you an interesting side to that world.
The stand-up,
that I'm not used to seeing. And I think it was a really cool way to go. A cool idea for a film.
The poll had quite a clear winner. The 40-year-old virgin, ran away with this one because like you said, right? It's the most iconic. Look, I'm sorry, guys. Everyone seems to go for the most iconic one. Have you guys seen it recently? Like, it's great. It's a great film. I goddamn love it. But I mean, guys, Knocked Up. Like, it tells a more serious story. Like, whatever. I don't know. Like, I guess I prefer that kind of movie.
I think what it is with that film is just people remember it so well. Like there are so many scenes to remember, and if you don't remember it, then someone probably else remembers something and has quoted it to you. And I think that's what makes The Simpsons popular. And that's probably it. I'm
remembering means nostalgia, basically, right? Like I mean, you could have chosen.
Nah, it means it's stuck with you as well.
Yeah, but I mean, King of Staten Island stuck with me, but it only came out 3 days ago. But I mean, I'd actually put King of Staten Island above 40-year-old virgin too. So,
I might do the same. But
yeah,
if I had to I don't know, watch a clip on YouTube, it might be that. I'm not saying anything's wrong, but I think there's nothing wrong with being iconic. Like it's a huge achievement to be iconic. You know what I mean?
It is. I think iconic. I hate the word iconic. I think iconic I don't know. When people think iconic, it's immediately good, and that's not the case.
Yeah, but also remember, it's not best film. The question, it's also favorite.
Right, exactly. It is favorite. So 40-year-old virgin ran away with it. And then you have Knocked Up and This Is 40 in the second place. I haven't seen This Is 40. It's the only one of Judd Apatow's films I haven't seen. I know that it is the Knocked Up kind of spin-off. But yeah, so Knocked Up, This Is 40, tied for second place, Trainwreck in third place, and not contending because it got no votes was Funny People and King of Staten Island. King of Staten Island, I understand because it only came out recently. Funny People Funny People I understand because a lot of people I know don't like that movie, but I watched it recently and I fucking loved it.
I think the problem with Funny People, it's actually not a problem with the movie. I think then they see Adam Sandler, the word funny is literally in the name, and they think they're going to see a comedy, and that movie is not a comedy. And also I think it was around the time, and that's still to this day, like people, we were talking about this off air, people associate Judd Apatow with like screwball comedies because he produces a lot of them, but they forget the films he directs are often a lot more serious than the films he produces. I think you could like it's like a lot of those like stoner comedies you'll see like Seth Rogen doing stuff. People will just assume Judd Apatow does them, and yeah, he might have something in the background, do something for some of those, but ultimately, like the films he directs are very, very different for the most part.
Yeah, very, very serious often. But yeah, man, that's the NDF game. When do you need to close this out, man? I'm fucking tired. I want to go to bed.
Woo! Thank you very much for joining us on Midnight Double Feature. This is an upcoming attractions episode. But what's an upcoming attractions episode? It's just what we did where we review movies and we watch and we talk about stuff. And if you want to join in the conversation, you can join the after party. What's the after party? The after party, thank you for asking, is our Facebook community group. We post memes and talk about trailers that we often talk about in the show, and you can be it. It's free to join. Just look up the after party on Facebook. While you're out on Facebook, you can also follow us and like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, and all that other good stuff. But hang on, if that's an upcoming attractions episode, does that mean there are other types of episodes? As a matter of fact, there is. Oh my God, there's feature presentations. We just covered Jaws. Feature presentations are when we go and do a deep dive into an entire film, and that is often fun. Coming up next, we're doing something a little bit different though. We're covering 2 animated Batman films. Isn't that right, Zoheb?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm taking it as one animated film. But yeah, Dark Knight Returns was separated into 2 parts. I had never seen it. I'd never read the comic. I've got the comic right here, actually. I've been reading it in preparation for the episode. So yeah, it's going to be a good episode.
I think it's part 2 was a lot of inspiration for Batman v Superman.
As I'm working my way through it, I'm seeing a lot of inspiration for a lot of movies. Like, Batman v Superman is the most obvious. The Dark Knight Rises, especially as well, and Todd Phillips' Joker.
Oh, really? Todd Phillips' Joker? Okay, yeah. I haven't seen them in a while. I remember like the first part. It's a bit more low key than you would expect from a Batman film, but he's just fighting like a bunch of random motherfuckers, right? It's like a bunch of like mutants or some shit, or it's like a gang.
It's more about his comeback. Like he's been out of the scene for a few years.
Yeah, no, those are films that often get overlooked, and some of the best of the animated DC films, I would say.
Good stuff.
Also, speaking of feature presentations and upcoming tracks, we also have special features. These ones aren't as common. They're often random. And as we spoke earlier, we covered Release the Snyder Cut book in a really great interview with the author. So definitely check that out. Anyways, I think that's it for us today, unless there's anything else you want to cover, Zoe.
That's it, man. That's all good. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. Really appreciate it.
Laters.